who have babies.
This meeting is being recorded.
Oh, okay. And I'm also introduced Lucy Brooks from BMR Health and Wellbeing as well. So over to you, Lucy.
Hi guys, so I'm Lucy Brooks. I am the commercial director for BMR Health and Wellbeing. So we are a wellbeing specialist. So we help companies put wellbeing strategy in to the workplace. We do lots of training in terms of mental health first aid, and we've recently partnered with HENPICKED, who are the UK's leading menopause in the workplace specialists. So we now provide menopause in the workplace training as well. So as Zoe said earlier on, if you can put your name and email address into the chat, then we will get the slides and everything over to you afterwards. Okay, so we're going to talk to you about menopause in the workplace today. So a bit of an overview. We're going to talk about why we need to talk about menopause. We're going to look at menopause, the facts. We're going to talk about menopause and employment law, or Lorraine is. We're going to provide about providing support during the menopause. And then looking at your organisation and whether it is menopause friendly. So that's whatever size that your organisation is. Some of it will relate to bigger, but it's all transferable. Okay, so and Lorraine's going to look after the chat while I'm presenting here. Yep. So this is all going to be a really interactive session, guys. So you will need your phones at one point. Just we'll do some polls and some questions on Slido. Okay, so what work are you currently doing on menopause in your workplace? So if you get your phone and you just scan over the QR code, or you can go to slido.com and put in that code, and then instantly it will come up with a question, and then we'll see what you guys have got going on in your workplaces at the moment. And don't worry, it's completely anonymous, so it won't say who said what. Put whatever you want onto that Slido. Okay. What work are you currently doing on menopause in your workplace? Oh, reviewing our policies, fabulous. Developing a menopause policies, okay, brilliant. Flag to HR, I want to provide the training, amazing. Okay, so we've got more people reviewing our policies, resources, nothing, communication, teams, recognise, share and channel, brilliant. Nothing, but this is the first step, so amazing. Hopefully you'll take away some stuff for you to be able to do today. Coaching. Okay. That won't be everybody. I'm just going to take a little snap of that. Amazing. Okay, so there's a lot going on there, and there's differences between what people are doing, like they're at the start of their journey to they've really already started to do those things. So hopefully today will help you with all of that. Okay, so why do we need to talk about menopause? So we're going to look at the demographic case. We're going to look at the business case. We're also going to look at the legal case, and we're going to look at the social responsibility case. So there's lots of reasons why we need to talk about menopause. Okay, so next question. So your Slido will appear up again. If you just go back to your Safari, you'll be able to see it. So what words come to mind when you think menopause? What words come to mind when you think menopause? fatigue, night sweats, yeah, life change, mood swings, I'm getting old, yeah. So mood swings is because it's been typed in a couple of times. The words that are mentioned more come up bigger. Power, uncomfortable, confusing, brain fog, HRT, weight gain, lack of motivation and enjoyment, weight gain. That one's come up a few times then if it's in big letters down. Self-care, tearful, no motivation, confidence, adjusting, frustration, rage, emotional, joint pain, depression and anxiety, wisdom, sad. Wow, there's lots going on here. Okay, fabulous. Self-care, okay, nice, okay. Okay, so there's lots of words going on there. So we can tell the effect that it's had on some people and also what they think about the menopause at this point in time, whether they've gone through the process or that stage in life, or somebody they know has, just a fear. For me, I have an absolute fear of getting older and not having, I'm perimenopausal. I'll quite happily share that with everybody. So you know, going through that process is quite daunting to me, and suddenly feeling like I'm an old lady as well. So yeah, there's a lot going on there. Okay, fabulous. Thanks for sharing, guys. Okay, so, and this is one of the biggest things for me to learn in terms of menopause when I've done some more training, because we do so much, don't we? Well, when we're at school, we learn about our periods and puberty, and we do sex education. But when are we really educated about menopause? I mean, it's very much talked about on the TV a lot now, with Davina's probably the person who's led that. Okay. However, but one of the first things that I learned was actually menopause is just one day. Okay, so it's one day. And menopause is actually the day that a lady had a period for 12 months. Okay, and perimenopause is the stage running up to that. So that is where those symptoms happen. Okay, and postmenopause is that time after that one day. Okay, and I thought that was a massive thing for me to learn, of this fear of this thing that was going to happen to me, and actually it was the build up to it. Perimenopause was the thing where the symptoms are going to be. Okay, so that's quite a big thing, definitely for me, that I learned on my journey. And actually in China they call postmenopause the second spring. So I'm just really super excited for my second spring and to be out of the stage that I'm in at the moment. Okay, so there's different stages. Okay, so what age does menopause happen? Okay, the average age for people in the UK is 51. It's usually between the ages of 45 and 55. However, it can be any time up to the mid-60s. All right. And it can be a lot earlier. And there's certain things that can cause the menopause to happen. So people having cancer treatment, that can bring on early onset of menopause. If somebody's had a hysterectomy, that will obviously impact them as well. So it's knowing when it is. And there's people can have early menopause as early as in their 20s. People can start going through that process, okay, which would be, you know, awful for somebody, especially if they want to have children and they haven't had children. To start going through that process can be a massive life-changing event. Okay, so, and then menopause symptoms, the top 5 symptoms. So there's actually 32 different symptoms that can happen to somebody, both physically and mentally, during the perimenopause. But the main ones that have the sort of big impact in the workplace is fatigue, hot flushes, focus and concentration. And we spoke a lot about that, brain fog, anxiety and worry, and insomnia. And a lot of the time, these things can be really misdiagnosed as well. So it's really, really important that we make sure that it's on the agenda, that we're having those conversations, because somebody could start, you know, not performing, and actually it's because they're in the perimenopause stage and it hasn't been diagnosed yet. And so it, you know, when we talk about it being in our policies, it needs to run through all of our policies, not just a standalone menopause policy. But Lorraine's going to talk to you more about that later on. Okay, so symptoms in the workplace. So workplace aspects that make the symptoms worse. So there's things in our workplaces, depending on what sort of workplace that we're in, whether we're in an office, you know, whether we're in construction, whatever it is that we're doing, that can actually make the symptoms worse. Now, if you had something that people were going to trip over in your office and break their leg, you would take that away. But we don't necessarily consider the environment that our employees are working in and what changes we can make. So these are some of the things. So high temperatures. So if we're working in high temperatures and you're having a hot flush as well, that can have a massive impact on somebody's well-being. Poor ventilation, humidity, no access to a quiet, restful space. We were talking about it before you guys came on about, you know, the trend for these open planned offices. But when you've got other noises going on in the background and you're trying to focus on your work and you've got brain fog, you know, that can cause all sorts of problems for you, and be very frustrating for somebody at that time, because everybody wants to do a good job, don't they? They don't come to work and think, oh, I'm going to be rubbish today. So making sure that environment is right for somebody to be productive, especially when they're struggling with their constant, is really, really important. So noise, dryness, and actually a lack of natural light are all environmental symptoms that can make our symptoms worse. Okay, so everyone is different as well. So what one person goes through, and that's the same with everything, isn't it? Really, what, you know, people have a different impact on different people. So we're unlikely to experience all the symptoms. Okay, so it's not like you're going to get all 32 and they start on day 1 of perimenopause and they're going to last for 8 years. Okay, we're unlikely to experience. We may not notice any major changes at all. So we may fly through it, just stop having our periods and enter our second spring and have no issues whatsoever, which would be amazing, wouldn't it?
Fantastic.
That would be amazing. Yay, I wish that was me. Okay, so 3 in 4 women experience symptoms. 1 in 4 is really, really serious. Okay. And 1 in 4 women during the perimenopause stage in their life consider leaving work. Okay. And 1 in 10 do. 1 in 10 do. Actually, they leave work because they can't cope with the symptoms that they're going through, the effect on their performance or their job. Okay. Symptoms usually last between 4 to 8 years, but can last a lot longer, guys. A lot longer. Symptoms can be managed. Symptoms do not have to be really bad or even unbearable before help is available. Okay, so it's really something that we need to think about. in terms of our workforce. And it's not just ladies that this happens to, guys, because, you know, our somebody in your workforce's partner may be going through this, and they might be having disturbed nights because of hot flushes. They may be tired because of what's going on at home. Okay, so it has a massive impact on the whole of the workforce, not just the ladies. Okay, so managing the symptoms. So there's lots of ways, and there's lots out there. So medical, so HRT, and there's lots around HRT as well in terms of misinformation. You know, that it causes cancer and all of these sorts of things. So it's really important that we understand that. And sometimes people have heard so many myths around HRT that they are concerned about going to their GP, or they don't realize what's happening to them, so they're not getting the right medical help. So there's lots of complementary medicines and additives, vitamins, etc., that people can take to support them. But there's also a lot out there that's very, very expensive, and you could be just spending lots and lots of money on things to and not get anywhere with it. Also lifestyle, so we can exercise more, eat more healthily, and that will impact while you're going through that process. So there's lots that people can do and that may be doing, or they may not even realize that they're in that stage. Okay, so I'm going to hand over to the lovely Lorraine now, and she's going to talk to you about employment law.
Okay, so what I wanted to really talk to you about, really some of the facts around menopause. It's not a specific protected characteristic under the Equality Act 2010. However, and there is a however, it is largely covered under the 3 protected characteristics of age, sex, and disability discrimination, and also in there with so if an employee or worker is put at a disadvantage and is treated less favourably because of their menopause symptoms, this could be discrimination if related to a protected characteristic. So, for example, age discrimination, we know that employees and workers are protected from being put at a disadvantage or treated less favourably because of their age. So we know that that's already protected. So this could include less favourable treatment because they're going through the menopause, because it's usually related to the age of a person, isn't it? And it's really important for employers to remember that age discrimination and harassment can also affect younger people who go through medical or early menopause. For example, it could be age discrimination if a colleague makes a rude joke about young people going through the menopause. So those things we have to sort of take into account. Disability discrimination, in some cases, menopause can be considered as a disability under discrimination law. And I am going to be talking about a few different cases which that's come under. And it's just determining whether it is a disability or not. So if someone is disabled, the employer must make reasonable adjustments and to reduce and remove any of the disadvantages that they might experience because of it. For example, this might include agreeing to record absences in a different way. So rather than keep menopause separately keep it separately from sickness absence, so it's not all, it doesn't go into that Bradford factor scenario. And it's maybe a good idea for employers to focus on supporting the person rather than trying to work out if someone's condition is a disability. So rather than spending all that time and focus saying, oh, have they got disability? Have we got a claim potentially from them? Actually focus on what can we do to actually support you while you're going through this, the menopause. And if someone is affected by the menopause and is put at a disadvantage and treated less favourably because of it, and it's related to the disability, this could lead to discrimination arising from a disability. The other one I wanted to really talk about was gender reassignment as well, because gender reassignment is a protected characteristic under the Equality Act 2010, and a person has the protected characteristic of gender reassignment if they are planning to go through it or have gone through it. So whether they've gone through the process or part of that process to reassign their sex. So this could be by changing physical or other attributes related to someone's sex. So as part of the Equality Act 2010, the term transsexual is used to describe people with a protected characteristic or of a gender reassignment. So many people prefer to use the word trans or transgender rather than transsexual. So again, if an employer puts an employee or a worker at a disadvantage and they are going through a transgender process, then that it does come into that protection, that they are protected by that characteristic. In sex discrimination, we know that it's unfair treatment to an employee or worker because of their sex could lead to a discrimination claim. We know that, but employees should also be aware that unwanted behaviour about someone's menopause symptoms could count as harassment or sexual harassment, depending on the nature of the behaviour. And so I think it's really key, it's really important to look at those different characteristics and really think about the different aspects of, you know, the menopause stages and how somebody's actually going through those processes and really understanding and talking to them, supporting them rather than thinking it's, you know, something else, you know. And again, some people don't want to talk about it. They feel embarrassed. But I think the more as organisations we can talk about it and actually have that within our cultures, but yes, we're willing to talk about it and actually we're going to put that across all of our policies, I think that's going to help. So when we talk about is menopause as a disability, so the symptoms of menopause can be physical. So as we talked about, hot flushes, heavy periods, headaches, they're physical. There's also psychological, like memory loss, confusion and depression. And these symptoms vary in severity, but they can also have a significant impact on a person's day-to-day activities. And I think, and the ability to perform as usual in the workplace, to that extent, it can also amount to a disability in some cases. And I wanted to really sort of show you a bit of analysis of some court records that we've looked at. And it shows really the number of tribunal cases that cite menopause, and it's increased by 44% in 2021, which is huge. And also menopause related employee tribunals have really doubled. And we looked at also records from menopause expert groups. And of those, we found 23 cases cited menopause in 2021. 44% obviously of those was an increase. So from the 16 of those cases included claims for disability discrimination. 14 of those claims included claims for unfair dismissal, and 10 included claims for sex discrimination. In addition, mentions of the word menopause has increased by 75% in tribunal documents. And I think that's significant. The amount of tribunal, you know, it's always a worry for any business having any kind of claim set against them. But that is just mind-blowing. 75% documents are coming through and it's citing menopause within those documents. So in terms of the claims, I've just really looked at 3 different cases. And again, obviously, when we send you all this information, we've got the open links here so you can actually look in a bit more detail. The first one are really sort of the disability discrimination. So this one is Donachi versus Talent Technology Services Limited. So as an employment tribunal considered whether this employer's menopause symptoms were substantial enough to amount to disability, and that's what they were looking at. Did it amount to that disability? So back in 2017, Mr. Natchi had started suffering symptoms of the menopause. And in 2018, they dramatically increased, and they were in which case they were very disruptive to her day-to-day life. So she experienced hot flushes several times a day, which was regularly accompanied by palpitations, feeling of anxiety. The frequency of the flushes would increase when she was under stress or pressure. And she also began to experience night sweats as well, and she'd wake up several times in the night. So Mr. Natchi also began to experience fatigue, anxiety, memory loss, concentration difficulties. All of those things were happening over that period of time. So within that short space of 2 years, she was prescribed with HRT patches by a GP, which improved some of the symptoms, but they still persisted, particularly when she was under pressure. And I think this is the key. She was under pressure, and they really sort of rose. So Mr. Natchi's symptoms impacted her day-to-day activities, including carrying out household chores, walking, reading, writing, all the things that you would just normally do and be able to carry out during the day, even just like using a computer and sleeping. So, but Mr. Natchi's employer argued that she merely suffered typical menopause symptoms, and therefore the impacts on her was not substantial enough to warrant it being her it's a disability. They wouldn't class it. Her day-to-day activities really wasn't classed. However, the judgment actually came back and said no, it was, she was indeed classed as disabled. And they really sort of looked at the whole case of how it affected day-to-day really activities. That's the key factor in this. It just didn't have, it wasn't just the, as they said, typical. It wasn't, oh, I just had some hot sweats and I've gone through those and I'm now taking medication. They really did have this massive impact, and therefore it was concluded that she did actually have a disability, and she won the case of an unfair dismissal on that one. On the next one, age discrimination. So this one was an interesting one in terms of, so this is McCabe and Salazar, though the Employment Tribunal, so Salazar had actually subjected Miss McCabe to age discrimination. That's what they were determining, whether it's age discrimination, and when it dismissed her at age 55. It found that the CEO's comments of calm down, don't let the hormones get out of control, dear, was evidence that the person who was saying those things was a much younger person, and they was viewed as Mrs. McCabe as a menopausal woman, that is an older woman, and put all that together, that they'd sort of asked also a recruiter to start looking for a replacement, a much younger person to replace Mrs. McCabe, because older people weren't familiar with IT, or IT systems and IT businesses. So please go and find me somewhere else. And they dismissed her. So she obviously took them to a tribunal. The unanimous judgment of the tribunal was that the respondent was unfairly dismissed. And the respondent was subject to age discrimination when it dismissed her as well. So she was unfairly dismissed. She was actually, it was age discrimination. And it was saying that they wouldn't give any deduction for the contributory fault, which is appropriate. So that person, and in fact, the actual story behind Mrs. McCabe, she was actually one of the directors of the business. So she had actually started the business up with 2 other directors. And as the company grew over the years, and this is what happened to her, she was dismissed, and they didn't actually go through the proper procedures of actually dismissing a director either. So there's a lot of other issues as well around that that dismissal, but age discrimination was quite clearly appropriate claim, and she won it. And the last one I wanted to talk about was sexual harassment. So this one is we look at Best versus Embark on Row Limited. So the Employment Tribunal held that the employer violated the employee's dignity and created a humiliating environment for her at work. So really, when he tactlessly asked her whether she was menopausal after she'd made it clear that she didn't want to discuss the topic. The tribunal also found that the claimant had been treated less favourably and had been also a victim of a target of victimisation due to she'd made some complaints during COVID, and she'd actually whistleblown on the company with regards to some of the health and safety protocols that have been put in place, which the company were not following. They were able to stay open because they were key workers, and so, however, they weren't actually following any of the procedures. So she raised that query. So following that, she was then led, it was they victimised and also really embarked on a series of various different sexual harassment remarks. So Miss Best was accused of moaning and being paranoid and being petty and obsessed. It resulted in a verbal warning, and then they ultimately dismissed her. So although the tribunal found she's partly due to the allegations of sexism, it was also obviously the health and safety disclosure as well. So it all came down, and they said it was, you know, in that time it was a detriment really, sort of, to actually the employee that they actually go through all of that in the workplace. And so for me as a HR professional, and also for you guys as business owners and line managers, we need to take action really to support our colleagues in the workplace. So we don't want to be getting to this stage where you get to a tribunal claim. What we want to be doing is starting the conversation. We need to be really sort of looking at how we, even in a very small organisation, how we can discuss and they really sort of involve everybody, male and female, maybe sort of do some kind of anonymous surveys, be sort of really look at practical ways to just, you know, change in the environment, you know, maybe just things like simple things like changing a desk round, opening a window. There's lots of different things we can do, but also really building that business case. So when we go to our leaders within the workplace, we can actually really sort of put that case to them to say, you know, these are the kind of things, this is the impact that the menopause is having in this business. Following, you know, the information you've received from your workforce, you've done that, you've carried out that anonymous survey, you've asked for some feedback, and it might be a case of you need to train your managers how to deal with that. But one thing that's really, really clear, the clock is ticking, and as Lucy said earlier, 1 in 4 will consider losing their job, will consider walking away from their job, sorry, not losing it, due to the menopause, and 1 in 10 do. They walk away. And every single one of your female colleagues will go through the menopause at some stage of their life. It's going to affect 100% of women at every stage, you know, at some stage. So it's not something that, oh, we don't need to think about it for another 10, 15 years. It also has an effect on male colleagues as well, partners, you know, in the workplace. So we need to be sort of really talking and having this discussion all round. Okay, so sorry, I've just winged myself through there. But any questions any of you have on any of the tribunal cases, I'll obviously send these links out as well. Any conversation you need to have, then please do let me know in the chat. And I'm now going to pass back over to Lucy, and we're going to talk a little bit more about what can we do and what measures can we put into the workplace.
Fabulous. Thank you, Lorraine. Super interesting stuff, that, isn't it? A bit scary as well.
Very scary, very scary. And that's why we've got to really just educating ourselves and being informed.
Yeah, really, really important. Okay, so let's talk about some reasonable adjustments that we can make. So just some examples for you. So hot flushes, considering temperature and lighting to help women manage their body temperature, make desk fans easily available, consideration around uniform or dress code. Okay. Difficulty sleeping, tiredness and fatigue. So review start and finish times. Could these be adjusted to taking that into account? Maybe some informal arrangements or flexible working, flexibility around taking breaks or increased breaks during the working day. So these are all things that will help people be more productive, rather than actually that, you know, they're having time off. Maybe they start an hour later because they're just not sleeping very well. Heavy bleeding and flooding. Have we got places that somebody can get changed? Have we got wash facilities for women to change into, you know, so they can get changed? We do a lot of work with construction, and that's something that they really need to look at, because, you know, a lot of the time they've got toilets where workmen go into. Is that somewhere that a lady's going to feel happy to change, especially if she's going, you know, she's got heavy bleeding or flooding? Access to sanitary products. One of our clients has actually got a grab bag that is available, which has got, you know, it's got a spare change of clothes that are of a dark colour, and you know, that if somebody does have you know, something horrible happens during the day, they're able to go and sort themselves out, feel a little bit more comfortable and carry on, if that's what they can do. Anxiety and panic attacks. So this is about getting it on the agenda, guys. So when we're asking people during, you know, are we having regular one-to-ones with our team members? And you know, is it, when we're asking them, are they okay? Are we just ticking it off if they're okay, or are we really giving them the opportunity to tell us if they're not? Have we got the opportunity to refer them to counselling if needed? And if we've got an EAP or, you know, other things that support our employees, are those qualified to deal with menopause? You know, have we really looked at what we get within our employee assistance program, or are we just ticking that off to say, oh, we've got an employee assistance program? Something to consider. Okay. So there's 6 points that both HENPICKED and BMR look at to ensure that you are a menopause friendly organisation. Now, that if you're smaller, these things are still relevant, but they may not be in such a big case. Okay, so they're just things to think about. So a lot of you mentioned it already. So your policies, your procedures. Is it clear how your organisation supports menopause work? Okay, so is that clear to everybody? What is right for your organisation? As I mentioned earlier, each organisation is different. What do you already have in place? Who is responsible for those policies and procedures? How are they easily accessible? A lot of the time, people have a policy, but nobody's aware of it. Okay, so is it being communicated? What's the sign-off process? So if you were going to put a new policy in place, how easy is it to get that into place? Or is it a really complex sign-off process for it to happen? Okay, so that's point 1. Point 2, creating a culture where menopause can be talked about openly. Okay, it's still one of those subjects where people, you know, the person who might be going through that stage in life is embarrassed about talking about, or the people that their line manager, the person that they report into, the person that they need to have the conversation with, is embarrassed about the conversation. So how do we create a culture where it can be openly talked about? And it needs to be right, again, for your organisation. Do you have a senior leader who is engaged in the program? So if it's not being talked about at board level, if everybody isn't on board, if it's considered to be a soft skill and nice to do, then it's not gonna run through the organisation. You're not going to be able to create that culture. So how do your employees get the information? So where is it? How is it out there? Is it a secret? or is it something that is readily available and everybody knows that you are menopause friendly? How can employees share their stories and experiences? And that's one of the things that Lorraine mentioned earlier about surveys. You know, are we going to ask somebody who lived this experience? How was it in your workplace, okay, when they went through that process? Were they embarrassed? Were they frightened to say what they were going through because of fear of losing it, especially in this current climate? You know, everybody's worried about those sort of things, aren't they? So, you know, what was it really like for them? Because we can assume a lot of the time that we know, but do we really know? Okay, so diary dates. So we've got World Menopause Day next week. Are you doing something about that? Are we talking about it? Do we talk about other national days that are going on? Do you run events, either in person or online? Do you give people the opportunity to go to lunch and learns, or, you know, other activities? Are those things available for you? So we really create a culture. We've got to go, we can't just talk about it once. We've got to be talking about it. It needs to be on the agenda. Okay. So step 3, providing the right training and support. And the biggest thing that I learned when we partnered with HENPICKED Menopause in the Workplace was what I didn't know. Okay. And I've learned so much, and actually it's given me peace of mind going through that stage in my life. It's made it less scary. Now, depending on how big an organization you are, will depend on the training that you want to do. Okay, but knowledge is the most important thing, and having that knowledge for your line managers, so they're able to have those conversations with their team members without saying the wrong thing and then getting themselves into one of the positions that Lorraine talked about earlier. Because I'm sure that CEO didn't want to cause anybody that pain, but actually it's from an education, they say the wrong things unintentionally. So it's thinking about that. So at BMR, we've got courses with HENPICKED Menopause in the Workplace for HR and occupational health, for champions. So very similar to our first aider. And we've also got it for those line managers. So it looks at it different aspects. But it's all about education and growing that knowledge, so you can have those conversations. Okay. So step 4, existing support. So do you provide access to occupational health or EAP? And what does that look like? Do your employees have access to those or access to be referred? Do you have an EAP, employee assistance program, which supports menopause in the workplace? So a lot of the time we've got an EAP, but does it cover menopause? Okay, what does it cover? Do our employees know that it's there? A lot of the time we work with businesses and we'll speak to employees and they'll say, yeah, we've got an EAP, but you speak to the employees, they don't know. They don't know it's there for them. Or they're also concerned about using it because it's going to impact them in the workplace. Okay, so step 5, and this may not apply to everybody, but it's thinking about your workwear. If you've got a uniform, do they have to wear a uniform? Is there a specific dress code? Is that appropriate when you're going through the perimenopause? Okay, can this be adapted to manage hot flushes or cold sweats? For example, layering. Can extra garments be ordered if needed? So if they did have an issue, they've got replacement clothes. What do we think about the fabric and the fit? You know, and if we are redesigning our uniforms, if we do have uniform in the future, could menopause be considered? Okay, and then the last point is being a menopause friendly workplace. So what about the workplace facilities? Is it possible to adjust the workplace temperature or provide desk fans? Okay. Is there access to cold drinking water? Is there access to washroom facilities and toilets in all workplace? Are they nice? Are they nice environments for somebody to get changed if they needed to? Okay. Could those who need to stand for long periods of time or a customer facing take extra breaks? Or could they be able to sit down? is that something that can be looked at? Okay, so we've sort of done a bit of a whistle-stop tour of the sort of 6 things that we would look at in terms of being menopause friendly, and depending on your workplace will depend on the things that you need to have in place. Okay, so ladies, we've talked all about menopause, but do men go through the menopause? Are they getting away with this scot-free, or does it happen to them? Well, actually, the gradual reduction of the male sex hormone testosterone with increasing age, and that can start as early as our 30s and can reduce by 2% every year. Normally, the andropause, which is the male menopause equivalent, happens between from the late 40s to the 50s. Symptoms, guys, is sexual dysfunction, weakness, fatigue, insomnia, loss of motivation, mood disorders, reduction in bone density, belly fat, and the loss of muscle mass. So there's some massive symptoms out there for the guys as well as the girls. And you can imagine the impact that has on their confidence as well. Okay, so what can be done? What treatment is there? So speak to your GP. They may get you to have a hormone test. So once tested, you may receive testosterone replacement to correct the hormone deficiency. Okay, other treatments, again, CBT, so cognitive behavior treatment, or other talking therapies, definitely to help with that confidence and loss of motivation, depression. Lifestyle changes, again, increase exercise, food that you're eating, getting more sleep, and relaxation. Okay, really, really important. Okay, so you didn't get off scot-free, guys, I'm afraid. So after this session, so we're just going to see how you're feeling now. We talked about the words that you thought about earlier and what was in place in your workplace, but how are you feeling now? What would you do differently? What further support do you need? So if you go back to your Slido, you can scan on that QR code if you've closed it down. But how are we feeling now? What do you feel you need to put in place? What support may you need? Additional support, okay. Well informed. We'll check our EAP. Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? We just assume sometimes, and it's worth having that conversation with the provider. Assistance in developing policies. Reflect, decide, coaching. Sending slides to others in the workplace. Okay. Being more informed. Brilliant. Yay. Developing our policies, our offer, reflect, decide, coaching, staff awareness. Okay, we can support with that. Amazing. Some more coming through. Sign a menopause pledge. Love it. Discuss policy with senior HR. Amazing. Just need to get it on the agenda, guys, and make sure it's not a scary conversation to be having. I'm excited for my second spring. I just need to get to that place now, Lorraine.
I can't
from
wait.
where I am now to the next place. Yeah.
I'm nowhere near it yet, but I can't wait.
Fabulous, guys. Well, thank you for your interaction. Okay, and we will. I think that's everybody has commented that. Right. So next steps for menopause training, EAP, wellbeing in workplace. And we've also got transgender awareness training coming soon as well, guys, so at BMR. So if there's any of that you need any help with, we're going to send you these slides, and you've got some great codes there for some discounts, guys who are part of the Cambridge Chamber. Okay, if you've got any questions at all, or you need any help and support with that, then just drop me an email, and Lorraine will absolutely help you with advice around policies or procedures. Okay, so then really it's just over to you. What questions that we may have in the chat?
So we have somebody's asked, what can we do as a small business? And again, and I get that, you know, not all small businesses have the resources, but I think from my aspect, I'd be certainly just starting that conversation and just really maybe doing a survey and just find out from all your employees of, you know, what are their thoughts. I know there's so much information about, and again, it could be some of your employees already are way ahead and can share so much more information. Also,
or maybe just do a training session, get somebody who you're going to have as your menopause lead in the workplace, and attend one of the training sessions. Yeah, you don't have to, it's I think just having it on the agenda,
yeah,
you know, just so people are aware that they can have that conversation, and the more knowledge that you have around the subject, I think is really, really important.
and also somebody asked, wasn't it going to Parliament on the 28th as menopause being a protective characteristic? And yes, it was, but they were finding that because there are so many different symptoms and there's so many, so actually trying to it would be a complete minefield of, you know, all the different symptoms, and that's why keeping it within those, really sort of referring to the 4 specific special characteristics, what we discussed earlier, age discrimination, disability, gender, transgender, reassignments, and you know, it's just really sort of keep it, you can find within those 4 ones that you can actually you can then assign where that menopause has come from. Yeah, so I think because it was such a vast amount of symptoms, that actually it'd just be a minefield. So keeping it within the ones that we already have, and then just ensuring that if you are treated you know, unfavorably, as I said earlier, in any of those areas, then yes, you can then cite menopause within those claims. Let's have a look.
Any other questions?
Have a look. One lady said that some symptoms still continue post-menopausal stage.
Sorry.
Is that you? So they still continue post-menopausal? Yeah, I think they do. And again, it could be, I think we said there was like a 4 to 8 years, but I know some people have gone longer than that, than 10, 12 years, and they're still having symptoms and suffering. But again, it's having that understanding and being able to support those people in the workplace.
Yeah, and I think it's being able to talk to the GP as well. If you're, and it being diagnosed, a lot of the time they're not being diagnosed correctly, so they, you know, might be diagnosed with depression and actually they're going through the menopause, and if their hormone levels were corrected, sorry, I apologize for these this is a joy of working from home and a cat walking past the front of the house. So yeah, and I think it's just getting those hormones right, which can cause an ongoing problem. I'm going to go back onto mute.
And there's big thumbs up for the Slido. A few people liked Slido.
Okay. So Slido, you can have it for free for so many questions as well. It's really good. So if you just Google it, yeah, and then they'll do a little demo as well. So yeah, it's great. I love it.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's it. Anybody else got any other questions? Has anybody already signed the Menopause Pledge? I know a few larger organisations, the likes of Santander, and much larger corporate companies have signed the Menopause Pledge, but smaller companies might not necessarily have.
I was looking on some of the other chamber websites to see what they were doing around World Menopause Day, to see if they were running any sessions. And actually Suffolk Chamber of Commerce have signed the pledge, and they've got a whole page on there about the members that they have of the chamber that have signed it. And that's something I'm going to be sending to our chief exec to see how we can get involved.
Right.
Yeah, that's pretty cool, isn't it? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but if anybody needs any help and support with any of the things that we've discussed today, Lorraine and I are both, you just reach out to us and we can do a call on a one-to-one basis. So,
and if anyone would like the slides, do drop your name and email address into the comments, and we will send you a copy of the slides after today's session. It's also been recorded, so it will be going up on the YouTube for the chamber site. But thank you, everybody. It's been really good to get involved. I know this is something that I'm part of the HR committee, HR and recruitment committee with the chamber, and we've talked about this a few times over the year. And I think the last event that we put out there, we were talking about, it was all around having difficult conversations. That was a few months ago, and I said then, because there's so much out there, I didn't think it would be necessary. And I suppose because I'm going through the menopause, or I'm inundated with so much stuff. So I just thought everybody else was the same, but actually no, not everybody else are, and so the HR and recruitment committee said, no, we need this to go out. So we said, great. So I already collaborate on a lot of stuff with their BMR Health and Wellbeing, and they brought HENPICKED into the situation and said, yeah, let's do this. So I hope it's given you all a little bit more thought and being able to go away and actually start discussing, start having those conversations. That's exactly what we want.
Thank you so much. It's so insightful.
Thank you.
thank you, guys.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Please, could I have the slides, and please can I connect with you on doing some training at my work? I'm actually part of the Menopause Experts group. I know you cited them in the tribunal information.
Yes, I did, yeah.
So basically, I will probably be going through them because obviously I'm licensed with them.
Sure.
Let me just open my video. Sorry, I'm trying to work at the same time. I've got my other laptop right next to me.
Don't worry.
Sorry, I look a mess. So I didn't know if you were affiliated or what it was.
Yeah. We will we can obviously, we'll get in touch with you afterwards, Babita. And
Yes, please.
yeah, is that okay? We've got your
I can't turn
email
my
address.
camera on. Oh, hang on. Don't know why.
Yeah, you put it in the chat, I think.
I think you've put it in the chat. So don't worry.
I put my email. I put my email there.
Fantastic.
But it's definitely something. I mean, I've flagged it with my HR already, and I've flagged it with my boss to be a stretch goal to actually do the training.
Yeah.
The problem is, and I'm qualified. I went through the training and everything with Meg, and I'm qualified to do it. But they won't let me do it because they said, oh, it's not your job. I'm an EA, so I'm personal assistant to 3 executives. And they're like, no, it's not your job. Leave it with HR. I don't know why I'm having an issue with my camera. It says it's being used